Welcome to NTD News. I'm Paul Graney. Here today is top stories. President Trump accepting an award today for signing the Criminal Justice Reform Bill, the First Step Act. He was given the award by one of the prisoners who's benefited from the act. U.S. Secretary of Defense Mark Esper met with his Turkish counterpart. Esper says the U.S. will send troops to Syrian oil fields to cut off ISIS. An educational media company is suing Google and YouTube for censoring its videos. PragerU says its videos are being censored even more after filing the lawsuits. It says it will continue to fight. UK lawmakers debate how to help Hong Kong residents. Some say the UK should follow the US in passing legislation. For now, the discussion is around granting Hong Kongers British citizenship. And in California, another wildfire threatening the homes of thousands. Footage shows bright red flames and a cloud of dark smoke near residential areas. Thousands are already evacuated. President Trump today accepted an award in South Carolina for signing the Criminal Justice Reform First Step Act. The award was presented by the 2020 Bipartisan Center. NTD's Holly Kellum has the details.
President Trump accepted the Bipartisan Justice Award from a man released from prison under the First Step Act.
He's a great gentleman, and we're very proud of him.
The First Step Act included sentencing reform and mandated programs to reduce recidivism, among other things. It was spearheaded by Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who worked with members of Congress to get it passed.
We called a couple of folks that people didn't think would come along, and they were incredible once they understood what we were doing.
Both chambers passed the bill last December, and Trump signed it into law the same month. Holly Kellum, NTD News.
President Trump today also responding to news that the Justice Department's internal review on spying on his election campaign has now evolved into a criminal investigation.
Trump spoke with reporters as he departed the White House for Columbia, South Carolina.
And it looks like it's becoming very serious from what I'm hearing. Investigate the investigators. Whether it's Strzok and Page, whether it's Clapper, and whether it's Comey and all of these people. Because terrible things went on for our country.
He added that he thinks the public will have a lot of corruption revealed to them through the process. According to the Associated Press and the New York Times, anonymous sources said the investigation will be led by Connecticut-based federal prosecutor John Durham. Thanks to the designation as a formal criminal investigation, his team will gain the ability to issue subpoenas, impanel a grand jury, compel witnesses to give testimony, and bring federal criminal charges. The Epoch Times reported that top Obama administration officials were involved in several forms of spying on the Trump campaign. Those efforts eventually evolved into Robert Mueller's special counsel probe. It's unclear what potential crimes are being investigated and when the inquiry turned into a criminal one.
I will say this. If anything ever happened with this phony witch hunt that the Democrats are doing, the do-nothing Democrats, I really believe that you'd have a recession, depression, the likes of which this country hasn't seen now.
Trump said the Democrat-led efforts to impeach him are not a takedown of the president, but a takedown of the Republican Party.
The U.S. Defense Secretary says the U.S. will strengthen its military presence in Syria with mechanized forces. The aim is to prevent Islamic State fighters from accessing oil fields and revenue.
Defense Secretary Mark Esper spoke at the NATO defense ministers' meeting on Thursday in Brussels. He did not say how many forces were currently in the region or how many additional forces would be sent.
We are now taking some actions, I'm not going to get into the details, to strengthen our position at Dar es-Zar to ensure that we can deny ISIS access to the oil fields, because we want to make sure that they don't have access to the resources that may allow them to strike within the region, to strike Europe, to strike the United States.
After a partial U.S. military withdrawal, Russia moved forces into the area. U.S. officials worry that Iran-backed forces in Syria could also capitalize on the chaos. Esper said his Turkish counterpart had told him that Ankara had recaptured some of the 100 Islamic State militants who are believed to have escaped from prison in Syria as a result of the Turkish incursion.
I've spoken to the Turkish defense minister. He informs me that all the ISIS prisoners, prisons in their area are under their control, and actually informed me that they've been able to recollect some of them. So that's good news.
Esper met Turkish Defense Minister Hulusi Akar during a NATO meeting.
An educational media company is suing YouTube and Google for censoring some of their videos. NTD's Eiling Eng was at the courthouse today to hear more.
Stop censoring PragerU!
Supporters of PragerU gathered in front of the Superior Court of Santa Clara County. The nonprofit educational media company is suing YouTube and Google for restricting their videos. Restricted videos are categorized as content with pornography or violence, topics that PragerU does not focus on. This means that kids with restricted mode on would not be able to see it. When they asked YouTube why their videos were categorized as such, they were told their videos were not appropriate for young people.
We have videos on the 10 Commandments, the history of the Korean War, the history of the Vietnam War, very educational, very appropriate videos, and we started to realize that they were targeting us because we're conservative.
He said there are over 200 PragerU videos that are restricted. They have filed 2 lawsuits, one in federal court and one in the state. Since the lawsuits were filed, they've noticed more and more of their videos being restricted.
So it's like they're punishing us for speaking out, and it's unfortunate, but we're going to keep speaking out because we need to do what's right. We're not doing this just for PragerU. We're doing it for all Americans, for free speech for everyone online.
It's just a different point of view that really needs to get out and get across, and the fact that it's being censored it's not unbelievable because we've faced this for years now. It makes sense to us. We see it all the time, but it's un-American.
A Google whistleblower was present to support their motion.
I worked at the company for 8.5 years before seeing that they threw all of their principles of making the world's information universally accessible and useful, and they got rid of that mission statement in practice.
These people cannot operate as a platform and operate as a publisher at the same time. Be one or be the other, but when you're the other, you don't get all the tax breaks. You don't get all the free ride.
And this is a problem because they have a monopoly over the United States search system. Like when people say search, they mean Google search, right? On the internet.
One child skipped school to show his support.
Keep us from saying our freedom of speech, and I don't think that's right. Like they're trying to shut down the First Amendment, and that's not cool.
They will not give up without a fight. They intend to win legally in the courtroom and in the court of public opinion. Eileen Ng, NTD News, San Jose, California.
Despite President Trump's vow that America will never be a socialist country, the idea remains popular and positive in the eyes of many Americans. One Venezuelan spoke with NTD about his experience of socialism.
When you listen to some congresswoman or some president's candidates, you say, wow, the same speech as in Venezuela. You don't see it, you know. How can this happen in this amazing country?
Venezuela human rights advocate Gustavo Tabar Arroyo was forced into exile for his documentary, recording the rise of Hugo Chavez, the former president of Venezuela. He said Chavez's socialist policies brought the once wealthy Latin American country into despair.
People are dying in the streets. Our kids starve to death.
Under Chavez, Venezuela went through a sweeping nationalization of industries, starting with oil. Banks, steel, hotel, and telecom came later. And then there's the social welfare programs that took 40% of the national GDP. The government couldn't afford it and responded to the overspending with money printing and price control. Officials within the system became corrupted.
I think that the new phase of socialism is the combination of drug trafficking, repression, corruption, lies, and repression.
In a Pew Research report earlier this year, 42% of Americans expressed a positive view of socialism among young people.
Because some people say in Norway and Sweden, no, they don't have socialism. They have free market, at least social democracy in somehow, but never socialism. The the production do not depend on the state. No one single experience where socialism has been successful. And it won't be either here in the States. I wish people listen to what I'm saying.
Penny Zhou, NTD News.
Wildfires rage across California, with the Kincaid fire threatening thousands in Sonoma County and the fast-growing Tick fire in Los Angeles County.
Los Angeles County Fire Chief Darrell Osby says more than 15,000 structures are threatened by the Tick fire. On Friday, the department saying the fire has scorched over 4,000 acres and is only 5% contained. The city of Santa Clarita says 6 homes have been confirmed destroyed, but the fire chief says the number will grow as damage assessment teams work in the area. Firefighters from several counties are coming together to fight the blaze.
Well, when the fire moved through here last night, the structure to my right caught fire, and it's been burning for most of the evening. Our main risk here is the structures that are next to it. Most of these houses are pretty close together, so we pretty much will be here all day, making sure there's no further spread of the fire to any of the other structures.
The fire erupted for unknown reasons Thursday in a rural area and spread rapidly towards Santa Clarita, fanned by Santa Ana winds blowing from the northeast. As many as 50,000 people were forced to evacuate. Osby says the firefighters' objective is to increase containment because a wind shift is expected by evening or during the weekend, which could send the fire in a new direction.
One family is finally getting closure as the body of a World War II Marine comes home, 76 years later.
John Taylor Burke was just 17 when he signed up to fight as a Marine in World War II.
I mean, this was a young man that signed up for World War II at 17 years old, and now we're bringing him back home 76 years later. It brings closure to the nation. It brings closure to that family. He's a hero. He's part of that greatest generation.
A native of North Carolina, he fought in the Battle of Tarawa in the South Pacific. In 1946, he was killed in action. With no dog tags or identification, Burke was buried on the other side of the world as an unknown, and his family was left without closure. It wasn't until 2017 when the Defense POW MIA accounting agency exhumed his body. It took another 2 years for his DNA to be analyzed. On Memorial Day, Jill Henderson got a call about her Uncle Jack.
She said, "I'm calling to give you the best Memorial Day present ever." And I knew what she was calling about, and I started to cry then.
Thursday afternoon, the plane pulled into the gate to a water cannon salute. And as Henderson and her family waited, Marines unloaded a flag-draped coffin. Saturday, Burke will be buried with full military honors not far from his hometown in North Carolina, home at last.
Amarillo, Texas saw its first snowfall yesterday, with 5.5 inches recorded. It's an unusual amount of snow for this time of year. The meteorologist who captured these images says it's a first, more than 5 inches of snow on a single day so early in the year. The record for the earliest snow is September 29, 1984. And up next, British police arrest a 4th suspect over the truck deaths. This amid conflicting reports on the nationalities of the victims. That and more after the break.
When you look at TV networks in America, a soundbite and fight-it-out culture prevails on news and commentary programs. As a Canadian, I'm fascinated with America, and I wanted to offer American thought leaders an opportunity to share their thoughts in a deep dive format, where we can explore their ideas together. And so American Thought Leaders was born. The world's most brilliant thinkers believed that open discourse was the key to greatness. However, all around the world, we see that discourse is being stifled, and political agendas have subverted media. The Epoch Times launched its Global Thought Leaders program to bring back this great tradition of free thought. As the host of American Thought Leaders, every week I interview some of the most intriguing minds on the most pressing issues of our time. Be sure to check out our new episodes every week.
Now to the UK, where lawmakers debated the escalating tensions in Hong Kong and whether to give British nationality to the residents of the former British colony. Watching from the public gallery were dozens of young Hong Kong supporters.
Among those at the debate, the last governor of Hong Kong.
For a dozen or more years after 1997, one country, two systems worked extraordinarily well.
Urging protesters not to be violent so as to play into Beijing's hands. The role governor of Hong Kong ceased to exist after 1997 when the UK handed Hong Kong over to China. The handover came with a promise. Hong Kong would have democracy and semi-autonomy, including an independent judiciary, something not enjoyed in mainland China. Recently, though, there are concerns that Beijing is increasingly encroaching on the city's freedom.
But in the last few years, both Hong Kong's freedom and trust have been undermined and eroded in an increasingly dramatic way.
Initially sparked by an extradition bill, the protests in Hong Kong have morphed into a wider demand for democracy and freedom. Now, the familiar sights of protests in Hong Kong, with clashes between protesters and police involving tear gas and pepper spray. Lord Alton, who proposed the debate, says the UK should follow in the footsteps of the US. The US House of Representatives recently passed 4 bills, 3 of which related directly to Hong Kong.
Basically, what those laws do is say that if the autonomy of Hong Kong, the two systems in one country, go on being eroded, then Hong Kong will lose its special economic status. That there will be implications as well for some of the individuals. So yes, there will be consequences. And should the United Kingdom do the same? Yes, I believe it should.
He is calling for an international push to provide second citizenship as an insurance policy for all Hong Kong residents. This initiative garnered support from over 170 members of both Houses of Parliament last month. While Thursday's debate didn't have a formal vote, Lord Ahmed, the UK Human Rights Minister, was there to respond.
The government shares the concern of the Noble Lord Alton and indeed all noble lords about the situation, and particularly about the violent clashes between protesters and the police.
Evidence of the brutal human rights violations in China was brought up. Hong Kong supporters watched the debate from the public gallery.
And I believe the UK government should really push much more than now. I know they have a lot of things going on in the UK, especially about Brexit, but then because the Sino-British joint declaration, I think they are responsible for this.
And in closing remarks, Lord Alton said the concerns of Hong Kongers will not be forgotten. Jane Warrell, NTD News, London.
Police are investigating the deaths of 39 people found dead in a truck near London. They have arrested 3 more suspects today amid signs that some of the dead may be Vietnamese.
Police arrested a man and woman, both aged 38, in Warrington, northwest England, and a 48-year-old man from Northern Ireland. They are suspected of conspiracy to traffic people and manslaughter. Police say they are continuing to question the 25-year-old truck driver, identified as Mo Robinson. Police said they believed the victims were Chinese, but the Vietnamese embassy in London said families from the Southeast Asian country had gotten in touch about missing relatives. There are growing concerns at least 10 of the victims could have been from Vietnam. Private ambulances were seen at Tilbury Docks on Friday as post-mortem examinations got underway in a bid to determine how exactly the 31 men and 8 women died. Forensic experts will seek to identify the deceased, something police warned would be a lengthy process. They said they would not give any more details about the identities or nationalities of the victims until the formal identification process was complete. Global Times, the mouthpiece of the Chinese Communist Party, said in a Friday editorial that Britain should bear some responsibility for the deaths. As China called on Britain to seek severe punishment for those involved in the deaths, on Thursday it also censured CNN's coverage of the deaths of the Chinese nationals. It is not uncommon for China to censure negative or sensitive stories covered by international broadcasters.
Up next, baby food has been found to contain toxic metals. The substances are believed to lower children's IQ. NTD's Miguel Moreno spoke to a neuroscientist about the impacts. More on that when we return.
Viewers have described China Uncensored like The Daily Show, but about China.
At the beginning, I was super excited when I got 500 views, and now the show's grown to about 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. One episode reached 7.9 million people. I'm a little freaked out that that many people have seen my face. In 5 years, I see China Uncensored as the sole source of edutainment worldwide.
And in baby food found around the nation, researchers found metals that could potentially lower the IQ of infants. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more from the research director.
Some of America's largest baby food brands were tested in a study conducted by Healthy Babies, Bright Futures. The organization found that 95% of the 168 selected products contained toxic metals that could damage the brain of a newborn. Rice-based foods and fruit juice tested high for heavy metal exposure.
The important thing to know is that the amounts that we found are fairly small. It's not any one brand or any one meal or day that's the problem. It's really the cumulative effects over a child's early years.
Lead, arsenic, cadmium, and mercury were found in the baby food. 40% of the products contained at least 3 of these metals. Houlihan said that although the amount is small, babies are vulnerable to these elements.
Heavy metals have always been in our food supply. But the science and the research began coming out 10 years ago to show that this is a particular problem for babies.
We spoke with Dr. Nicole Avina, a research neuroscientist, nutritionist, and professor from Mount Sinai School of Medicine, to find out how serious it is to expose babies to these metals.
These are known as neurotoxins because they can have detrimental effects on the brain in terms of how they affect IQ and cognitive functioning.
The doctor said that the counter-argument against these studies is that metals such as arsenic are found naturally in the environment.
However, if we look at the cumulative effect of exposure to these various different metals over time and through other means, such as in the environment, through access to different toys that might contain these types of metals like lead and mercury in trace amounts, can have an impact.
Both Dr. Avina and Houlihan recommend giving babies a variety of food to avoid overexposure. Healthy Babies, Bright Futures is urging the Food and Drug Administration to set tighter regulations on the amount of metal content in baby food. The federal agency has stated that it understands the risks and is working on ways to reduce exposure. Miguel Moreno, NTD News, New York.
A new study predicts that wind could power the entire world. According to the International Energy Agency, offshore wind power could generate enough electricity for every home and business on Earth. The Paris-based watchdog said lower costs of offshore wind could eliminate the need for fossil fuels. Although offshore wind accounts for just 0.3% of global power supply, the IEA predicts that by 2040 it could be the single source of electricity in Europe. The report says over the next 2 decades, $1 trillion could be invested in the industry. And up next, an exhibition in France uncovers the secrets of Renaissance artist Leonardo da Vinci. Stay tuned for the progression of his artistic development throughout his life.
Our investigative reporters at the Epoch Times have spent 18 months uncovering the biggest political scandal in modern history. We connected the dots around Spygate, the actions by Obama-era officials against Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. Join me on Declassified as we bring you up-to-date developments on this unfolding scandal.
The lasting beauty of traditional oil painting. Realistic style. Brilliant. Moving. Expressive. 2019 NTD Television International Competition for Figure Painting in Oil. Guided by truthfulness, kindness, and beauty. We invite you to join us on our journey back to traditional art. Gold Prize Award of $10,000. For more detail, please visit oilpainting.ntdtv.com.
5 centuries after Leonardo da Vinci's death, several mysteries still surround the Renaissance genius. The Louvre's current exhibition sheds light on some of these mysteries. NTD's David Vives has the story.
According to John's Gospel, the Apostle Thomas did not want to believe in Jesus' resurrection until he had seen or touched his wounds. When he met Jesus, he discovered his own disbelief. When Leonardo da Vinci saw the statue of his master, Verrocchio, in his studio in Florence, he was only 12 years old. According to Louis Franck, curator at the Louvre exhibition on Da Vinci, this art piece will forever mark the young disciple.
This art piece is at the entrance of the exhibition because that is where his school of painting comes from.
At the age of 30, Da Vinci painted the Virgin of the Rock, as well as the Last Supper, which drew the attention from all of Italy. Though Da Vinci is often considered a great scientist and genius, as evidenced by all these sketches on the human body, or this research on the flying machine, he was above all a painter.
We often tend to show that Leonardo got lost in an extraordinary maze of scientific research, but in reality, painting was at the center of his life. He called it a divine science of the divine.
Expressing the divine character was a goal sought by many Renaissance painters. In the 12th century, the construction of stained glass windows was intended to transform physical light into divine light entering churches, a theory that inspired Da Vinci. His research in painting led him to create the sfumato, an optical effect that transforms the light of a scene. This technique required him to devote his entire life to it.
Da Vinci painted between 15 and 20 paintings, which is not much, but the realization required all his time, really many years. The Mona Lisa, St. Anne's Day, he spent about 15 years on those, and at the end, it wasn't finished yet.
In his treatise on painting that Da Vinci wrote around 1490, he said that the painting of divine scenes can transform the painter's mind.
He wanted to explore the deepest meanings of religious painting. For example, he tries to depict the state of mind of the Virgin, who keeps Jesus from playing with the Lamb, which is the symbol of Jesus' mission, while understanding what Jesus' mission is.
500 years after his death, Da Vinci's genius continues to shine on the world of painting.
And that's all for today's NTD News. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Paul Graney.